Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Romancing Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Today, we're romancing Grenada with the Grenville Men. I am from St. Andrews, and so they're the tongue boys for us. They're our tongue boys. And we're going to focus today, though, a little bit more on basketball because they are our basketball team. I don't know anywhere else in St. Andrews where we had a basketball team, but in Grenville. And I have a little story to tell, but I'm going to introduce the people on the panel here with me first. I have Mr. Edwin Joseph, also known as Paul. I have Jude. I don't know Jude's last name yet. Mr. Dwight Gibbs and my cousin. We learned that lately, Mr. Gerard St. Welcome, everybody, and good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having us.
Well, welcome, very welcome. I'm going to do a little bit of nepotism here, and I'm going to start with my cousin.
Hey.
Okay.
Mr. Gerard St, you've had quite an accomplishment, but I must tell everybody first what piqued me in basketball. We used to go with our great grand aunts on Sunday mornings very early to Telescope Beach so she can take a bath, drink some water, and do her medical thing. And we would hear plow, 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 plow. We never knew where that was coming from. We go in, we're hearing plow. We're coming back, we're hearing plow. Then one day, my aunt said she's going to go by the market and see where this plow, plow, plow is coming from. And we saw all these tall Grenville guys in some short shorts playing basketball in the coals, in this coal section, close to the abattoir there. And finally, the mystery was solved. And since then, every Sunday we'll pass by, take a little peek before we go up, a few guys practicing. Gerry, I think at that time, though, it would have been in the 70s. So you might have been one of the younger boys. It would have been Tricks and those older boys ahead of you. Yeah. But I was speaking to Martin Harvey about this, and he said, you got to get Gerry and you got to get Edwin together because these guys have stories to tell. And Gerry and Edwin were the guys that organized themselves into a team, used to go to St. George's to play, hired the pickup truck, and see me as a big man in the back of the truck with his boys going down to St. George's to play. Gerry, I know you went to Presentation College, so we can't really have today. Usually I have people on, and it's a lot about SAS and what SAS had done and accomplished. And you are different, which is really great in that you're from the country, you went to Presentations College, and you made the U20 basketball national team. So tell me a little bit about you basketball, and then you can bring Edwin and everybody else in.
All right, well, just speaking about the coals and the plows in there brings back a lot of memories because that's where it all started. And Edwin, who is here with us, was my first basketball captain, if you guys didn't know that. But basketball really started, you could say, in the communities, like Rivulet Lane, Grenville, in the backyards. That's where we really started playing, in the backyard of Miss Jocelyn Walcott. We had a room there, a little hoop, so we started playing there. But what stands out is that basketball and sports was a community activity. My grandmother is the one who introduced me to basketball.
Wow.
So she took me to the court because when Patrick Simmons, Albert James, and other notable players were playing, the mothers and the grandmothers came out with the kids. And so that's how I was introduced to basketball, seeing Simmons and all the other players, with their short shorts and tall socks. That was the order of the day, happening. And so that sort of piqued my interest. So basketball for us, Edwin and I, and even Jude later on, started on the streets, in the yards, and then we transitioned to the basketball court. And so that was our daily activity, playing basketball or playing football or cricket at the park. And so that's sort of what drew us together. But the first team, I just want to start with the first team I was part of, which is the team Edwin was the captain of. And because Edwin and Leo Mark, who's one of the top basketballers, were a little bit ahead of me in terms of playing the game. I was new to the game. And so we found ourselves in a team. We made a team, but Edwin may be able to give a story on how that team was formed. But interestingly enough, my first few games was on that team. And I remember, Edwin, we traveled to, we make a couple of trips. We went to Grenada, I remember clearly, to play a team from Grenada. And, we basically organized ourselves. I also remember to buy our first uniforms, we had to find bottles and wash them and sell them and those things. So we didn't just sit back and wait. We wanted to play so badly, and we wanted to look good as well, that we really took the initiatives. And so finding bottles and washing them and selling them was like fun, doing those things, even though, I don't think my mother and grandmother knew that, but I was part of everything that happened in the community in Grenville and Rivulet Lane. And so going to school in St. George's, whilst I lived in Grenville and went to school in St. George's, I never really lost that connection to being a Grenville person. And, so my roots, that's where it started, playing the sports and being outside, playing the marbles. We played everything together, small goal marbles. So basketball was just a small part of the overall experience we had. We hold crabs together, we went on the beach together, we went for mangoes together before we went to the beach. So it was like a group of guys that came together, sort of around the same age group, a few older, a few younger, and that team formed. And that's where my basketball career started, just from that team, playing on that team, and not being on let's say starting five, because I was a young player, and that motivated me over the years to work on my game. Well, that U20 thing on the national team, I would say I never really saw it coming because I wasn't a gifted basketball player in the beginning. So I had to work really hard. So it was like every morning on the court, going to shoot and wanting to shoot. So quite early, I realized possibly I could have been a good shooter. And so I spent a lot of time on that. And that is what propelled me to the national team, because the time I spent working on shooting, I basically was recognized as one of the better shooters on island after a certain number of years. So basketball, yes.
So sorry, I have to ask, so your position was?
I played shooting guard and point guard literally for almost all my years. Naturally, I was a shooting guard, which is number 2 position. Mm-hmm. But because of my temperament, most teams thought, well, he could be a good point guard, but deep down, I never really loved that position, but I played it for the team. My natural position was shooting guard. So, but it was quite an interesting experience in them, because basketball and playing in Grenville sort of helped to build relationships that are long lasting. So when I see guys like Jude and Dwight and Edwin, it's like, this is my family when we see each other, because the experiences we had growing up was so rich. It's a lifelong something that I can share with and talk for about an entire day, 2 days, because there's so much to share. But in a nutshell, the experience was a very rich one. Playing basketball and sharing part of my life growing up with Edwin and Jude and Leo and Dwight and Schoon and Mr. Simmons later on when he came back from studies is one that I wouldn't trade for anything, because it's sort of a formulated relationships that we would have for a lifetime. And the sport of basketball is what brought it to us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so I'm going to bring Mr. Poy in, because I know where he lived. You're in Rivulet Lane. And I'm learning that Rivulet Lane had so many young men who could have formed your own team. So Mr. Paul is right in Grenville there, right on the main street. And you went and grabbed these guys from the lane, and what happened? How did you guys come together? Because the lane can be isolated from Grenville proper.
Before I answer your question, I'll give a little different perspective. Everything Gerry say, I totally agree to it.
All right.
He kind of hit the nail right on the head. But I'll give a little different perspective, because I think I'm the oldest guy on the show.
Okay, Edwin, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll talk about basketball in 3 different eras. I think I was fortunate enough to be hanging out in the ankles of most of the bigger boys, so I kind of had the privilege of some of the experiences probably Gerry and Jude and Dwight later on didn't really possess.
Actually, if I can interject, they told me you are Mr. OGM proper. You have the crown. So go ahead.
Well, you know, I think we all do. You know, this is one of the things that's a shared crown. You know what I mean? But first, I would like to start off by really thanking Gerry and Gibbs for really staying back and giving back to Grenville basketball on a whole. You know what I mean? I think when you go back and you see the works that what Gerry and Gibbs doing presently, you know, it just definitely gives me goosebumps. So I got to give them a lot of kudos for that. But let me just go back in basketball, talking about those kind of 3 different generations. As a really youngster, just as Gerry walking with his grandmother to the game, I used to walk around Grenville very early with my grandmother. Rather than stopping at the market to hear the ball bumping, we used to go to the car park.
Oh.
So basketball really started at the car park.
Oh.
And that's when you used to see guys like Kingy,
Forrester,
Juke and Poison, the Peters boys in the lane. What's his name? That used to be the principal of the assistant principal of RC school there.
Mr. Lord.
Mr. Lord.
Yeah.
You know, all of these guys used to be playing ball right in the market, in the car park.
At car park.
And there used to be a big tree on the opposite end. We used to climb up on the tree and watch them playing on the other end. And from time to the ball will go in the water and they'll go for it. So that's where basketball started out in Grenville. Okay. And the amazing thing about it, I think that was a really ingenious move by them. They moved the basketball from the car park and brought it to the market. And the beautiful thing about bringing it to the market, one, when we start having games, because people start paying to come to the game, so we had a means of funds for the game. Okay. More importantly, they had electricity already there. So it was a matter of just getting lights and putting. So today, the youngsters kind of used to criticize the market, but looking at where it came from to where it went, I thought it was an ingenious move. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, so back in the days when Carl, you know, and the Peters boy, Juke Poison, and all of these guys, Kingy and all these guys used to be playing, you know, I mean, I used to see these things. That time Tricks and used to have started playing ball as yet.
So they're the ones that brought the code there. It wasn't a
they brought the code there. Okay. And you know, I remember when Tricks first year Nets, you know what I mean, with Carl and those guys and Ken Gilbert and, you know, Lennox Zai and, you know, all of these guys used to be playing ball. And they was like the youngster compared to the Kingy and those guys. So basketball really started evolving from that. Then afterwards, you know, when guys like myself and Braggett and Leo Mark that start going on the court when Tricks and them start playing, and we wasn't getting any playing time. Like we'll go there and stay all day and don't get to touch the ball, right? Do you remember that, Gerry? So
I know.
What we started to do, you know, we started to play ball on a Friday night. Friday night is a very important time because that's when the butchers coming in and the big boys don't come and play. So we used to have to play on a Friday night, you know what I mean? That's because the big boys, Tricks and you know, and Toffee and Philip and Kaibo and these guys, they used to come and play on a Fridays. So typically we used to get Fridays, the court was ours, you know what I mean? Until the butchers kick us out. You know, you get the time when they start bringing in the truck, they start bringing in the cows start shitting on the court, now it's time to leave. So, you know, so basketball.
And the coals, they needed the place.
Exactly. And on a Saturday night when the market ends, you remember, Gerry, I don't know if you guys remember.
I remember,
we used to get our broom. And
our broom and sweep clean the court.
Sweep the court before we start playing. You know what I mean? So, you know, and you know, and the beautiful thing about it, when we sweep in the court, one person used to sweep the court, 10, 20 of us used to sweep the court. We used to sweep the court like in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was really, really kind of fun. So what you start seeing then is when the Tricks and the Kaibos and the Kessies and all of these guys start playing, the youngest boys, myself and Braggett and Wayne and and Brigidy and all of these, we used to get no play time at all. Competition starts and we used to get no play time. So I hook up with Semi and Braggett and myself, say we got to form our own league. we got to form a.
Semi is Martin Harvey, who is my mentor here.
That's right.
Because actually, when I send you messages, you didn't respond, and until I said Semi Martin Harvey, and you say, "Oh, you're talking. You got the password."
Well, again, Trix was my uncle, and he's a fantastic. We tight. Our family is very tight, but Trix was more of a father figure to me. When he see me on the court, he used to send me home. Okay, but Sammy was more of a mentor to me. So when I expressed the ideas of forming a junior division, wow. Sammy thought it was a great idea.
Wow.
So Braggett and I kind of lobby PP and Totes and those guys, and we figured we had enough youths around to form our own league. But at the time, those Ramdani had already sponsored a team. Bain had already sponsored a team. Sam had already sponsored a team. Mr. Andrews already sponsored a team. So most of the big business people in town that used to fund basketball, they don't want to sponsor the little boys, you know what I mean? So pretty soon we kind of figured we need money.
Okay, so Gerry sent me some pictures, but I didn't want to share it yet before we talk to introduce Mr. Jude and Dwight. So can we just talk a little bit about who's next to you?
Jude.
And then we talk to Dwight, and then I'll come back to you and
Okay.
we start sharing pictures and so on.
Jude Bartholomew from the Lane. Well, I started playing basketball around in the 90s. And well, my mentors was Gerry, Leo Mark, Dwight, Schoon, and those guys. And then we come in the market, watch them play ball. We couldn't, as Paul said, we couldn't get a chance to play because there was the bigger guys. We had to wait until they leave around 1:30, and then we start from 2 o'clock, go back until 4. And then we all work our way up to earn the respect, and so they could steal us now and then to play. Come on, you guys come play with us. You guys come. So one by one, like myself, Jimmy, who there? A couple of guys, and we get ourselves involved, and they brought us up in the right way to play the game. I played with Gerry as Lane Blazers, and he was co-captain with Leo Mark, and he showed me the game in a way that I learned to respect him and still respect him for what he did and what he's doing now. He and Dwight Gibbs. Although Dwight when Dwight come around, this tall guy come and everybody looking up to him because we shot at him, and
How tall are you?
He come and he says something, you do it, you just do it, otherwise out of the game, next man coming. So we had to do what he say, and so he grew our game. We myself, I made the national under 20 team, and we go from there. So for me it was a good experience, and for what Dwight and Gerry is doing right now, as far as I understand, I mean, they're doing some great works. I would love to be part of it, but
Come on board, man.
We'll talk about that in a subsequent broadcast.
It's wide open.
Because, I know most of the guys are in the US. We are in Canada here, just a few of us. Paul, myself, and who? Quevi, Tar. So it's not playing there was in Canada.
We can still do something?
Yeah.
Yes, all the guys are in the US, so it's easier for them to connect with them and stuff like that. But we will get involved somehow. And
Gerry, make notes.
At the end of the program, we'll talk about that, right?
Give back just the same as the guys in the US, doing the due diligence, giving back, and Gerry and Dwight is on the ground doing I would say the majority of work, doing the groundwork. So that's just about me and my small bit of basketball I play.
Okay, so your coaches are going to tell me some more about you. Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Can I just cut in a bit?
Yeah.
I just want to add that Jude, even though Jude came after us, his basketball IQ and skill set improved so quickly that he came on the scene as a hot shot, really, as a youngster.
Yeah.
And he really advanced quickly, and he's one of the youngsters that we always refer to that worked really hard at his game and was able to, progress so fast that, he transitioned from youth to senior level really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was very respectful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's one of the
you, right?
things. Jude, can I ask, are your family from Ledik?
Yes.
Okay, I have a feeling. Miss Roslyn is your grandmother?
Yes, she is.
Oh, my cousin.
Wow.
What she said?
We're having a family meeting.
Family meeting, man.
White, I think we should take our exit.
Me and Dwight, I will figure out how we're related.
White, I think it's a family reunion here.
She knows me.
Yeah, I know you are. I'm coming to you. Let me just finish with Mr. Jude here. Jude, cousin Roslyn is how I call your grandmother. She's originally from Carriacou and she's related to my mom.
Wow. All right, Jude.
All right, let's see how I'm related to Dwight. Well, Dwight I knew as a very young kid to Montreal Seventh-day Adventist Primary School.
Sure.
And, his older brother was in the comprehensive secondary school. And Dwight was a very bright, shiny, active, very friendly, lovely young man. He had no fear. But I didn't expect him to grow this tall because he didn't see.
Right.
But your brother was quite tall. Your dad was very tall, but you stayed down there for a while. So it's nice that you grew and ended up in basketball, put your talents in basketball. So I'd like to say welcome. And
thank you.
Tell us how you're associated with Grenville basketball, because where are you from? Paul, Simmons, how do you call it?
Yeah, so I'm not an OGM. I'm not an OGM.
Yeah.
I'm not from Grenville.
Right.
And my birth and basketball is totally different to the other guys. So a tall, lanky guy going to school in SAS. I was introduced to volleyball first by the Russians. And when the Americans came in 83, I think in 85, we had a coach called Mark Muller. Yeah, and he started high school basketball. And he came to SAS one day, saw me on the veranda, and he's like, "Hey, lanky guy, why aren't you on my basketball team?" I never saw basketball before that, never played a game, never saw a game. And I said, "I don't know anything about the game." And he said, "Come, I'm going to teach you the game." And so Mark Muller was very instrumental in getting me to play basketball. So I started training with the SAS team and going around, firstly sitting on the bench. In those days, Father Mark was the captain, and we have guys like Shot Scratch and guys from Grenville on the team. So I was practically learning the game from there. And I remember clearly, we used to go and play basketball in the back of a fisheries van, and I went to St. David's to play in Crowshoe against St. David's. And I was on the bench, and somebody called out to the coach. Joe Alexander was the coach. Give it to our man again. And from that day, I started to play basketball. I had a starting five, from that day, But from that school, I really like my brother, Gobert, Carl Vincent, Clary, Tony Peters. Those guys pulled me on to Peters Trotters. So we used to go around on Sunday in Mr. Woodner Peters' car all over, and I used to be the bench guy. But I went along with them, learning the game. And sometimes when I went to the market, they would pull me onto the court with the bigger guys and stop the game in the process and showed me what I have to do right, what is going wrong. So I practically learned the game from those guys, and basketball became my love because I was very insecure in SAS as a tall, lanky fella. And those guys used to really, what you call bully now, they used to really tease you in school. Like, hey, male bamboo. What kind of names they used to call you?
Yeah.
And poor no, because poor went to SAS. And they used to give me a hard time. But when I funked basketball, I really funked myself, and that really propelled me to really love this sport. And that really changed my life completely. So I grew from playing for SAS, pulling on Trotters, and after that I went to Trinidad to CUC, Caribbean Union College. I played some ball there. When I came back, I think basketball in Grenville was really controlled by the Lane Blazers, Maurice Bishop Pumpers. So they decided now to, you know what, that team was really too strong. So let's spread the game. So they zoned St. Andrews. And because I was living in Pearls, I had to play from Pearls go up. So I had to literally create a team. So I really went to Tivoli. There's a court in Tivoli, and I started Tivoli Pacers. So we really started. So I was player and coach for Tivoli, and we came to Grenville, and I think we created a great impact. I think we ended up in the semifinals for the first time. We also had a junior team that would have come first in the, I think, under 20, under 19 competition. You know, guys like Standard Pope, and those guys were really hard. So from that, I went and lived in Paraclet, and I started basketball in Paraclet and in Moncton. So I really helped spread the sport outside of Grenville to the north, you know. But basketball has really been my life. I mean, I can't stop saying thanks to Coach Mark Muller for really introducing me to that sport. And throughout the years, I would have just dedicated my life to basketball in whatever small way. I think one time I was involved as a technical director of basketball in Grenada. After that, I refereed throughout the island. I went to Trinidad and do some courses. And so far, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about what I've done, but basketball really has really driven me. It's really propelled and changed my life, you know.
That is a remarkable story. But even zoning, who zoned? Because now you're in a massive zone in Grenville. Because I don't.
Well, Cindy, and I could explain this. After the basketball took off among the youth, the same team that Edwin started, our game took off, and it became almost impossible to defeat Maurice Bishop Triple Pumpers, which is a product of the team Edwin formed.
Right.
So Leo Mark, myself, I don't know if you remember Oliver Fletcher Popagod from the Lane, Ricardo Phillip from Telescope. So we had this very strong team, but was centered around Lane Blazers, the Lane players. And it became almost impossible to beat us because myself and Leo was already on the national team by that time. And Leo was a top scorer in the island, even at that time as well. So he was very aggressive, very versatile, one of the best players to have played. Yes. So, and the combination of myself and him was almost unstoppable in Grenville. So the executive decided, nah, that ain't looking too good. So they decided to zone it off and have communities. And even though I was living in the Lane, they drew the boundary just after my house, so I had to play for Grenville. So I could no longer play for the Lane Blazers because the combo of myself and Leo with the other players was just too strong. And the executive thought, no, for the development of basketball, we had to sort of break it up a bit so that basketball could be a little bit more evenly spread in terms of the competitive nature of the games.
So Gerry, they draw the boundary right by the pavilion.
Right by the pavilion. And I was living just before the pavilion. I mean, that's kind of interesting thing, you know.
I guess that was good then for the development of basketball. But when I'm listening to Dwight having to go all the way up to Tivoli, to me there could have been 3 zones between him and Tivoli. So,
but you see, before basketball was a Grenville sport in St. Andrew.
Yes.
I mean, and the guys could attest. When they went to the court, when you're outside of Grenville, the guys in Grenville didn't used to bother you. They think you couldn't play the game, you know. Sure. So we were really trying to prove to the guys in Grenville that we could play the game. So we learned, and I could tell you, always to play basketball. I never played only sweating and anything with Leo Mac. I never played together with Gerry, you know, because we always tried to beat them. So we was never on the same team with them. The only time we played together was when we played for St. Andrews, you know. So we're trying to prove to the guys in Grenville that, hey, we from outside of Grenville could play also. But it was really tough battles when we really bounced up, you know.
All right, so let's just take a break. Stay right where you are, because I'm gonna come back